Boundless Authenticity Podcast.
When you manifest, do you call in spirit? Do you imagine what you want? Do you use your right brain or your left brain? Well, I'm Laura Van Tyne, and I will be hosting a manifestation mastery course this coming January. And this isn't going to be your typical wishing and hoping and vision board kind of course. We're diving into strengthening our intuition, removing those pre-programmed belief structures, and working in the quantum field and more to help you achieve what you want and you deserve. Join us now by clicking on the link below.
Thanks for tuning in to the Boundless Authenticity Podcast. Let's use your imagination creatively for a second. Imagine there's a universe where planets and stars and even continents are created. And it's not happening by chance, but by intelligent forces. And let's suppose that all of it is operating through a universal field that's invisible to science as we know it, for one reason or another. Let's pretend that that's not what's really happening right now. Well, I got Jock Doubleday sitting right across from me, and he's a playwright, a screenwriter, and a researcher with a lifelong fascination for ancient history, cosmology, and the origins of the universe. I'm going to assume that through his writing and his storytelling that he's extending an invitation to you, the audience, to expand your thinking, challenge assumptions, and explore the possibly unknown to science profound mysteries of existence. Jock, what's going on?
Well, I'm happy to be here. I mean, the fact that you contacted me out of the blue was kind of great because we'd never spoken before, and so it was like, this is cool. And then I found that you had done this Boundless Authenticity bunch of videos on your podcast, and I had seen them before, but I didn't know that was you. So well done. I guess you've been going for about 3 years, and that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of content, a lot of great guests. I looked through your guest list, really cool people, really out of the box people. And I'm really out of the box. So if people want to stay in the box today, they should probably just tune out.
I agree. Joe Rogan is always available. You know, Laura Van Tyne is the one that was like, a long time ago, she was like, you know who you should check out? Jock Doubleday. And I was like, okay. I'll get to it one of these days. So it wasn't random, trust me. Plus, I'd seen your podcast sometime back in 2021, I think. I remember vaguely it was around the time of the fake thing that was going to kill your grandmother that we can't say or we get banned.
Yeah, well, I appreciate Laura's recommendation. I mean, I've interviewed Laura Van Tyne, and she's incredible because she started out as a normie, as they call them. I was a normie once. I was a normie until I saw a video of the North Tower of the Twin Towers falling into its own footprint in around 10 seconds. And I thought, that's weird. And that was four years after the event. And I started to go down the rabbit hole of 9/11, and 9/11 became a window into a whole bunch of weird stuff, including ETs and a whole bunch of stuff. So eventually I went to the Bosnia pyramids in 2011 because I had heard that there's pyramids there, and I researched it before I went, and I found Semir Osmanagic talking about the northern orientation of the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun, previously Visočica Hill to the Bosnian natives. That's what they call it. They call it a hill. They don't call it a pyramid. He renamed it a pyramid, and he came on to radio shows and all sorts of podcasts and was talking about this and went on speaking tours all over Europe and America and Australia. He went everywhere talking about the Bosnian pyramids. And I thought, well, that sounds crazy. To have pyramids in Bosnia? I mean, Egypt, okay, it makes sense. And we all know about that. It's in our heads. Central America, okay. South America, all right. Well, some primitives got some stones together and stacked them up. That's pretty much how academia looks at it. They're all primitives back in the day. And they just stacked up some stones and don't worry about it too much. And but we didn't have anything about pyramids in Bosnia. So I went out there and I volunteered for 3 months and I did some excavation, made some videos. And then I came back to make some professional videos for the foundation that's in charge of excavation in Bosnian pyramids. That's called Archaeological Park Foundation. And you can find that under Piramida Sunca, SUNCA.BA on the internets. And that's the website for all of the science from the Bosnian Pyramid Complex. Now, the pyramids in Bosnia, it turns out, are not the same kind of building as the pyramids in Egypt, the pyramids in Central America, the pyramids in South America, pyramids in Mexico. They're not blocks stacked up on the earth. They are the earth. So it's like pyramidal shaped objects, tumuli, conical shaped objects that are part of the landscape. And that's why no one saw them as pyramids until Semir Osmanagic, who had gone around the world for 10 years and studied pyramid complexes in South America, in Central America, and knew what a pyramid was. When he came back to his home country of Bosnia and he went to Visoko for the very first time, he'd never been to this little village, even though it was pretty close to where he lived, pretty close to where he was born. He's born in Zenica, north of Visoko, and he lived in Sarajevo, which is south of Visoko, but he'd never been on this little road to Visoko. And so he was invited to the museum there in 2005, April of 2005, and he found that this hill, Visočica Hill, he just looked at it and said, oh, that looks like a northern orientation. He got out his compass. He went up on the pyramid. He named it the Pyramid of the Sun that day. He went up on it, looked across the Foinica River, he named the Bosnian Pyramid of the Moon, other structures. So now there's many structures in the Bosnian pyramids that people say are separate structures, but they're still all part of the landscape. They're all joined through the riverbed. And that's the key element that I want to bring to you today, that the riverbeds of the earth, not just in the Bosnian Pyramid Complex, but everywhere, the riverbeds and creek beds are the foundations for hills, and those foundations were built in the distant past by advanced races.
Okay, well, don't keep me in suspense. Tell me the mechanics of that.
Well, in August of 2015, I went down to the Foinica River, and I said, I wonder if this is the foundation for the pyramids. Because the pyramids are so large in Bosnia, the structures are so large that no one really knew where the foundation was. No one knew where they started. So you have the Pyramid of the Sun over here. Then you've got this little town of Visoko, it kind of levels out. And then you've got the river down to the river. So people thought, oh, well, I guess the foundation for the pyramid is somewhere where Visoko is. And it's all covered with asphalt and buildings, and you can't really find it. But I thought, well, if you look on a topographical map, the eastern side of the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun goes all straight down to the riverbed. It's not bothered at all by the fact that there's this town Visoko there. It just goes, and I was like, what if they built the riverbed? And then they built the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon on this side, and the Pyramid of Love, which is paired to the Pyramid of the Sun, and they're all joined through the riverbed. And it was like, That's an interesting idea. I wonder. And that was 17 months after being there. I'd been there a long time, so living in this little Muslim village, just me and my American energy. There's pyramids here. And the Bosnians are just sipping their cafe outside, their coffee, and they're like, what's with all these Europeans and Americans saying that our hills are pyramids? They're crazy, So we're just zooming around Visoko, doing our thing, and kind of ridiculous in the eyes of the native Bosnians. But the younger people in Bosnia have been going with us on the journey of realizing that these are ancient structures, even though they look like the landscape. So that was the beginning. Once I got into the riverbed, I realized that it was built of the same clay material that the pyramids and that the Bosnian pyramids are built of. So what the engineers of the Bosnian pyramids, the landscape features that we call pyramids, did, the ancient architects of this complex, and they did it between 35,000 and 34,000 years ago, and that's carbon dated from fossilized leaves that were found underneath a lot of construction clay on the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. So there's no chance for the cosmic rays to affect the dating of that. So because I know that there's some problems with carbon dating if the cosmic rays have been able to get to the sample, but the fossilized leaves had not been affected by cosmic rays. We got a really good dating on it at 34 to 35,000 years. So the ancient builders of this complex said, we're going to use clay, hard baked clay, one layer, soft earthquake mitigating clay, the next layer, hard baked clay layer, soft earthquake mitigating clay. And the soft earthquake mitigating clay layer could be a centimeter or it could be 3 meters. They changed it up. Now, what they did in the riverbed was, it's so interesting. And then the day I went down there, I was like, oh my God. Yes, on the banks of the Fojnica River, Fojnica, if anybody wants to look it up, Fojnica, they use the same structuring as the pyramid. So they had these large, thick, baked claystone blocks, layered, and then soft earthquake mitigating clay below, soft earthquake mitigating clay above. And it's like, okay, it's the same as the pyramid. But if you stick a yardstick into the deepest part of the Fojnica, and you put your hand on the top of the yardstick, and then maybe stick another half of a yardstick up, and then you go straight across to the riverbanks. From that point down, it's all adhered clay layers. So they baked one clay layer to another clay layer, to another clay layer, to another clay layer. There was no soft earthquake mitigating layers in between. And I was like, oh, they didn't want the river water to wash away their soft earthquake mitigating clay layers, because that stuff, you can just pull it out with your finger. It's really soft. It's sticky, and that's why it works to keep a pyramid in place for thousands of years. Really sticky. But eventually, rainwater slowly takes one molecule, another molecule, but a river is going to take your earthquake mitigating clay layers out too fast. And then the hard baked clay layers that are alternating will collapse, and then your foundation's gone for your pyramid, and then your pyramid goes. So for like 4 or 5 feet to the middle, deepest part of the river, they adhered every single clay layer. So there's no way that the water could wash away their foundation. The water is coming over the pyramid complex itself. It's not a river that's a natural river that's going to take your pyramid out from the side like any other river could do for any other pyramid on the planet. No matter what flooding event occurs, the water is going to run over your pyramid complex, and the pyramid complex stays there basically forever.
That is fascinating. But what even made you decide to go and explore it?
Well, do you want the usual answer, or should I give you the deeper answer?
The deeper answer.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. All right, so here's the thing. I've only said this on a couple podcasts, and I've done, 35 or 40 interviews on ancient history. But since you're so outside the box,
I'm allergic to boring. I really am.
In the best possible way, you're outside the box, because anybody who's allergic to boredom and the boring qualities of our society, that's a friend of mine. So yeah, so if people want to stay bored, tune out, because this will not be boring. Now, whether you believe me or not, that's another thing, but I went to volunteer in the Bosnia Pyramid Complex because, first, here's the normal answer. The mystery of pyramids in Bosnia called me very strongly. The non-normal answer is that the reason the mystery of pyramids in Bosnia called me is that the same reason it calls many others across the world to volunteer on that project, and that is because they had helped to build it. So many years later, it was only 3 years ago, a reader named Leah Ray Light told me that I had worked as a project manager in the Bosnian Pyramid Complex, All the project managers were human ET hybrids. The leaders of the building of the complex, the directors, were all ETs. They weren't humans at all. The project managers were hybrids, and then the workers were whatever the workers were. I don't know who the actual workers were. Maybe some humans were involved. I don't know. But my name was Ponis, Ponis, and I worked with many different project managers there. So the reason I stayed there for 23 months, which seems crazy, why would a playwright stay in a little Muslim village that had nothing going on at all, and who looked at me with kind of not really disdain exactly, but just they weren't sure what to make of me. Like, why would I stay there for 23 months? Well, because the complex drew me, and it was because I could see that it was all built. In other words, Semir talks about the pyramids and the tumuli and other structures, but I can see that all the hills there are built. And not only that, I've documented that in videos that I've made on Bosnian pyramids on YouTube. So, to me, everywhere I looked as I walked around that complex for 23 months, I saw a building, and other people couldn't see it. And I was like, even Semir couldn't see it. And I was like, Semir, the riverbed's built. On that day, when I found out, well, it was actually there's a little fly that's flying around, so I have to have my attention drawn to that little fly, this little fruit fly. Anyway, so Semir came to pick me up to do some video work. A few days after I went down to the riverbed, made the video, took photos, and I said, Semir, the riverbed's built. And he said, that would be a lot of work. So as far as I know, and that was in 2015, it's 10 years ago. So as far as I know, no team has been sent down to the riverbed to check it out yet. So this is interesting because Semir has a lot on his plate already. He's got all these structures, the Ravne Tunnel, that's where everybody meets. That's the Mecca right outside Ravne Tunnel, this prehistoric tunnel that's associated with the complex. And that's an astounding tunnel. He excavated it. It had been filled in with loose sand and river stones 4,600 years ago by an unknown advanced culture, filled into the brim, which we couldn't even do. If we filled in a tunnel with loose sand and river stones, it would sink. It would compact over time. Well, it's not compacted over time. It's to the brim. And then they left the water channels open on the side, which is interesting. Why'd they leave the water channels open? And 90% of it was filled in, and to take all that material out with wheelbarrows and shovels, which is what they had to do, which is what the Archaeological Park Foundation workers have been doing since 2010. That's a lot of work, and they keep going, and it's a labyrinth of curving tunnels, systems, and branches of tunnels. And they find the ceramic megaliths in there that are set over the crossing points of water channels below them. The crossing points produce negative energy that comes up, and so the ceramic megaliths mitigate that negative energy. And so then the ceramic megaliths have been tested in laboratories to show that they are artificial. They're not just rocks. They're obviously ceramic anyway, but they've been tested. He always tests everything. So this tunnel takes up a lot of his time. If it was just the tunnel alone, that would be enough time. So he doesn't need more stuff like, oh, there's an artificial riverbed that people can explore. They can float down the river and look at the artificial riverbed. Well, to me, that would just be fun. That would just be a great way to bring tourists in, is do a tour of the riverbed, have lunch on the banks of the river, and go, hey, look how they built it. But as far as I know, that hasn't happened. That's okay. It's hard for humanity to progress, because even though Semir has brought a lot of new knowledge to us, he's not open to certain things, and that's fine. That's fine. He's got his own way of looking at things. And if I had discovered the Bosnian Pyramid Complex, I'd have my own way of looking at things. And someone would come along and say something that sounded crazy to me, and I'd be like, yeah, well, I'm going to wait on that. I get it. But so slowly we sort of lurch forward. Science slowly progresses. Now, so what am I going to do with this theory about the riverbed as being a foundation for the structures? Well, I just walked outside the complex and I said, how far does it go? I don't need the Bosnian pyramid complex to tell me anything. I want to know how far this riverbed goes. So I walked outside the complex and I took a taxi and then I took a van with friends. I kept going farther and farther out. And every time I went back in the riverbed, it was always built. The material that it was built of changed. There's a bridge called Buci Bridge, B-U-C-I, south of Visoko. At that bridge, directly below that bridge, if you just look under, you see where the clay of the complex, which is north of the bridge, changes to concrete. And you're like, that's weird. So what they did was 34,000 years ago, they started 35,000 years ago. They used clay to repair a landscape. They put a new landscape in for some reason. I don't know why. I mean, so there is some intel that there's a temple complex already below the Bosnian pyramid complex that essentially the new one hides. So once we get to the tunnel system inside the Bosnian pyramid of the sun, and which we will eventually, then we're still going to have to get to the temple complex below the Bosnian pyramid complex to find more chambers and more tunnels. And that's going to be an exciting adventure into the distant past. But for some reason, they said, we're going to bury this temple complex under the biggest pyramids on the planet, the biggest documented pyramids. So I decided to see how far the building went. The concrete riverbed outside the complex, how far did that go? And I couldn't find an end to it. And I thought, well, if I can't find an end to the building, I mean, I went to the Dragica tributary, which is the largest of 12 tributaries to the Fojnica. And I said, I wonder if this is built. And we went in, some friends and I went in that day, and it's still built. And like I say, it's a different material than the clay Bosnian pyramid complex, but it's got the same building. So I thought, well, how far did they build? I mean, they've already built for kilometer after kilometer, which means they could really build all of Bosnia if they wanted to. Did they build all of Bosnia? So these are the ideas going in my head. And then I went to Serbia, then I went to South Africa, and I worked with Michael Tellinger, and I explored the hills there, and the hills there have the same building. One of the features of the Bosnian pyramid complex is that the clay layers, the hard baked clay layers that I told you about, where there's a baked clay stone next to another baked clay stone, right? And there above it is the soft clay, below it is the soft clay. Those are inclined into the center of the structure. So let's say the center of the structure is here. Boom, they're inclined like this. Inclined. Here's the center. Inclined. Inclined. Steeply inclined. We build like this. But they're like, no. If there's an earthquake, we're inclining every layer, and they're just going to wedge in stronger. If the structure moves, they just wedge in on the soft clay below them. It gets stronger in an earthquake. If a pyramid gets hit by an asteroid, that's a different thing, but it'll just be destroyed. But if there's an earthquake, it makes it stronger. And this is genius. So I looked for the same building, and that's what I found in South Africa. The hills of Watervalboven, which is where it's in Mpumalanga province, which is where Michael Tellinger's Stone Circle compound is. He's been there for a long time. He planted a mulberry tree when he was young that when I got there, it was this massive tree. It just, you could climb in it forever. And there was like thousands of mulberries in this one tree that he had planted. And it's like such a beautiful thing. So there, the hills by the Elands River, their material is this iron oxide rich material. It's not clay. And there's no soft layers. It's all just one hard, brittle structural layer and another hard, brittle structural layer. You can if you take a piece of these rocks, you can just break them. They're pretty brittle, but they survive the ages, and they're all inclined into the center of the hill. So no matter where you go on the hill, inclined in. So I went around the circumference, all of the circumference that I could get around, because each hill is joined to another hill. So I went around the one hill, and it's all like this. And it's like, oh, just like the Bosnian pyramids. That's weird. Now, I'm a playwright. I didn't want to be the guy who had to say, this is going to sound crazy, but I think the earth was built, That's just, why would I want to get involved in the drama around that, But I was like, well, this is what the earth is saying. I mean, the continents are telling me that they're built, and the geologists haven't seen that because they never asked the question. They never said, is what I'm looking at natural or artificial? Because they were told it was natural. So they're like, well, we'll just come up with mechanisms for how nature could have done this. This is just what happened. That's pretty much geology. It just happened that way. They're just like this all day long. It just happened that way. There was uplift. There was uplift. There was erosion. There was uplift. I mean, they just keep throwing these jargon terms at you, and they'll say, oh, that straight line vertical seam between this section and this section and the next straight line vertical seam that's at the exact same angle, and the next one, and the next one, and then just multiply that by several trillion around the globe. All you see is vertical seams in the material. When you're taking a road trip in America and Southwest, this is vertical seams, straight, perfect, right angles. And they're like, that's a crack. It's a joint fracture. And they had to call it a joint because it's clearly joined together. But they have to call it a fracture because if they just said it's a joint, then they're admitting that it was built. And they don't want to admit that. They don't even want to consider that possibility. But that's what's in front of our faces if we just ask the question. If we just ask the question, is what I'm looking at natural or artificial?
It's one of the things that I wish people would just do already is anytime they hear something and it sounds like, yeah, science, bro. Like, just question that. Like, it's probably wrong, right?
Well, I mean, it's an adventure that all of us can engage in. Science. We are told that only experts can do science. Like, unless you're Neil deGrasse Tyson with a degree, or Brian Cox with a degree, or Michio Kaku with a degree, then you can't do science. You just have to sit there and listen to what they're saying. And it's like, but I thought that Aristotle went out into the world, and he didn't go to Yale. He was just a man, and he said, "I'm going to look at the natural world, and I'm going to create something called natural philosophy that later turned into science, and I'm going to try to see what a blade of grass is. I'm going to take the component parts and see if I can figure out what grass is, a blade of grass is." Now, that's one way to look at the world. Another way is to watch the wind play with a blade of grass. And maybe if you're a cow, you eat some grass and you go, that's what a blade of grass is. You don't have to get a microscope. There's different ways to figure it out, but there's an adventure waiting for every single person who has a brain and some eyes to engage the world. Or even if they're blind, they have perhaps even more acute hearing than we do because they're used to using their ears, and they can hear the world, and they can analyze the world. They can study the world through acoustics. So all of us have the potential to be scientists, and all of us are scientists if we choose to be. We don't have to wait for the experts to give us any pronouncements about anything. And if you want, we could get into the young universe because that's the key to it all.
Well, I feel like you're right, because if someone is just simply thinking, then that's the basis of all science. I mean, if I had to explain this to a Gen Zer or younger, I'd be like, Aristotle was like, bruh, what if? And that's it, right? So I wonder, what is the mechanism that keeps people just stuck where they just don't even want to go, what if this thing is actually a different way? Because, I mean, science is about observation in its basic form, right? So why not just observe and ask questions about things? Why blindly follow, whatever's in the next freaking National Geographic just because it said, elephants fart a certain number of times a day because we saw it, okay, but could there be more to that story? I like to break shit down into the stupidest form sometimes to just be rude on purpose, because I feel like intuition plays such a big role in exploring ideas that challenge established knowledge. And you're talking about stuff like planetary creation and advanced civilizations that existed before us. And we got, like, right across from me, there's an idiot trying to build a 6-story building on a foundation that's made of sand, and there's ocean currents underneath this thing. And, you know, he doesn't see anything illogical about using steel rebar inside of cheap concrete that's going to swell and expand and explode and crack over time because of the moisture. He doesn't see anything illogical about that whatsoever. And yet these dudes that are portrayed on purpose as being not as advanced as us figured out all that stuff that you just mentioned. What is this about?
Right. And speaking of concrete, in the Bosnian Pyramid Complex, they also do use concrete occasionally. So on the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun, and Ken Rolla has talked about this.
Yeah, you can't say that name on the internet anymore. You can't say Ken Rolla on the internet anymore.
You can't say that?
You got to block him out anytime you say it. You text anything on Facebook, you got to block it out.
Yeah, I found Ken, his real name, but I won't say his last name. I found Ken 12 years ago or something, a while back, and I was working for Semir as a videographer, and I had the position for 19 months. And I said, Semir, let's invite Ken Rolla out here. You gotta learn about this guy. Oops, I just said his name again.
Keep on saying it.
We'll just aggravate the Luciferians. That's good. I like doing that. Okay, so let's invite Ken out. So Ken Rolla, Semir found Ken, he liked him, and Ken Rolla came out and gave a beautiful analysis of the pyramid, and he explained the scalar function. He explained that the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun is a scalar field producing machine. And the way it does that is starting with the piezoelectric effect, which starts by the compression of the clay by the really, really, really dense and heavy concrete slabs that were set onto the pyramid once the clay structure had been made. The builders said, okay, now we're going to put this really dense, heavy concrete on it, and it's going to compress the clay. And that compression is like when you strike a what's it called, a lighter. When you get the flame for a lighter, that spark is from the compression of the quartz. So that's what's happening. So the crystalline clay is being compressed enough that it creates automatically the scalar field that goes for kilometers. And inside the scalar field, you have lots of health benefits. I had to sleep only 5 hours a night in the Bosnian Pyramid Complex, and normally I sleep 8 hours a night. So that's one thing. And so he basically gave this analysis in a video called Blueprint for Existence, which is interviews with a whole bunch of different people that I did there. So, including Semir. It's a beautiful video. People should go see it. So, there's a plane going by. It's taking my attention. We have a little airport nearby. So, Ken, why are we talking about Ken? I forget. Because of the scalar. We're talking about Ken and the concrete. Because you'd mentioned the concrete of modern day, and the concrete of the ancients is actually much more strong than the concrete that we make today, except for some specialty concretes that we can produce. But generally, our concrete that we use for bridges and roads and things like that is way weaker than the concrete that the ancients used to create slabs that they put on the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. Those things don't have cracks in them, and it's been 35,000 years. What they did was they used clay as a binder, So the clay that they used to make the entire pyramid of the sun and other structures there and the riverbed, they used that as a binder, and they bound these little river stones, different sizes, these clean river stones, into slabs that are far too large and far too heavy for any machinery that we're going to have for years and years and years to move. There's no way we could move them. But somehow they poured them on a 44-degree slope, and the slabs don't get thicker down here, which you'd think they would if it was liquid. They're pouring it in. So somehow they poured them on a 44-degree slope, or they poured them somewhere else and brought them there, but how would they bring them there? They're way too heavy to move with our technology. So then you go, I wonder what kind of technology they use to move these, or to just pour them, even to just pour them. So then you go, I wonder how hard these are. I wonder how durable these are compared to our concretes. So Samir sent these samples from concrete on the Bosnia Pyramid of the Sun to a lab, and they said it's 133 megapascals. So that's basically, now let's see if I can remember this. It's been a long time since I've been there, but I think a megapascal is 10 atmospheres of pressure, is from what I remember. I hope that's right. People can look it up, what a megapascal is. So 133 times 10 is 1,300, what is it? 1,330 atmospheres of pressure to break the concrete. Most concretes that we use for bridges and roads, if it's 40, 50, 60 megapascals, that's pretty good. Theirs is 133. These are supposed to be primitives. In fact, academia doesn't have the slightest clue who built these structures, and because they don't know who could have done it, they just dismiss them as hills. If you go to Wikipedia, they don't even have a page for the Bosnian pyramids. They just call it Bosnian pyramid claims. And a lot of people, including me, have tried to give some information to that page, and we're just shut down. No one will take any information on the Bosnian pyramids. I spent 3 months writing an article about all the scientific conferences that had been there, all the papers that had been delivered, the names of the papers in different languages and all this stuff. And they immediately rejected it. And I said, but you didn't even read the thing. It's only been 10 minutes. And they said, well, under our classification, the Bosnian pyramids are listed as a hoax. So we don't take anything under it. And I said, well, who made the classification? Who said the Bosnian pyramids are a hoax? Well, why did 80 scientists, and this was back in 2015, there's been more since then, but 80 scientists had delivered papers on the Bosnian pyramids. What are the scientists studying if it's just natural hills? What are they doing there? So we know that 80 scientists have delivered papers on these structures, via various features of the structures, including the tunnel, the prehistoric tunnel. So what are they studying? And so Wikipedia is just like, we don't care about science. We just have this note card that says the Bosnian pyramids are a hoax. So that's it. That's Wikipedia. Yay. It's the encyclopedia for the masses. So if you want to know what hummingbird is in your yard, it'll tell you, because no one gives a fuck what hummingbird is in your yard, except for people who love hummingbirds. I'm not trying to get down on hummingbirds. I'm just saying, that's interesting for some people, but it's not important to human history. It's not important to the major swell of events throughout on this planet. But the Bosnian pyramids are key to understanding what happened in the past, which is that, there were no human tribes available with labor force that was large enough to build these structures. I mean, they're far too large for any human populace to build. So who the heck built them? Who had the technology to make these concrete slabs? Who understood that inclining the clay layers into the center of the structure would make them stronger? Why did they build them in the first place? Why do they want to make these pyramid-shaped hills and tumulus-shaped objects last for ages? What's the point? Why not just let hills be hills? But then you go, wait, I wonder if any hills are really natural.
Yeah, it's interesting. The house that I'm in right now, we are right on the beach. And what they did 70 years ago was they dug the foundation, placed some kind of a mat on it, and then they filled that in with limestone. So I wonder what the logic is for that, but obviously it's better than just filling it with concrete, right? Like cheap ass concrete from modern day. And we don't have any cracks. I mean, everything's still good. And you see stuff that's modern that's built around here, and like within a year or 2 years, it's in shambles, So it goes to show you that even back then, there was something going on where there was devolving rather than evolving. And I wonder why, just using that example, why humanity has allowed this to happen. Like, why have we just gone far away from all the smart shit in the wrong direction? Is it just because of money? Greed, convenience? Like, what do you think?
I think it's dumbing down in 12 years of school. I call it trauma-based mind control. That's what I call schooling, which is what it is. I mean, because they get kids together in a situation where whatever they say is under scrutiny. If they raise their hand and they don't have the right answer, then it's humiliation. If you're homeschooled, it's a different thing because you're learning with your parents. Your parents are learning all this stuff at the same time as you are. They're like, oh, look at this book and let's learn together. And it's a game. It's fun. And it's like a race. If it's a homeschool group, it's a race to see, it's like who can get the answer first, and it's fun. But in school, it's like you get laughed at if you say the wrong thing and you're humiliated. So it's basically what they do consciously is to associate humiliation with learning. So once you get out of 12 years of this trauma-based mind control, then whenever someone comes to you and says, hey, there's some pyramids in Bosnia, suddenly you're in the role of the teacher. The person with the new information becomes the teacher, and the teacher is the one that gave you all that humiliation. And you're afraid of the teacher, and you go, oh, I don't want to hear about that. No, because that'll make me feel stupid, and you're going to try and condescend to me and humiliate me, aren't you? That's the immediate reaction. It's all underneath the surface. Nobody consciously thinks this, but as soon as you have that 12 years of training of your mind and emotions in place, then the whole society is just like, oh no, we can't have new information. I'm just going to go with what we were told.
Makes sense to me. So you have something that you're going to release called Artifact Terra. Am I correct?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
It's going to be 100% hemp. Instead of taking down a tree, we're going to take down some hemp. I mean, this is 100% bamboo toilet paper. We don't need to take down a tree to have toilet paper. There's lots of ways to avoid cutting down trees, which is probably good since the planet is deprived of oxygen right now in a big way, and trees provide lots of oxygen. So, which is one reason the controllers are trying to cut down our forests, because they're trying to change the entire climate to a climate more suitable for another race that's not us. And I'm not going to go into that unless you want me to.
Please do. But after you answer the question.
Well, they're also increasing the radiation if they can, and there are other races that have lived here before we came along who believe that this is their planet. There are reptilian races below the ground. There's the Draco, otherwise known as the Alpha Draconans, but for short the Draco, who are fearsome creatures, and the biblical image of Satan is based on the Draco, specifically because they are reptilian, bipedal, large creatures, some of them with wings, some not, some with long tails, some not. They live underground. They live underground because the surface is too cold for them, because they're reptiles and they want the heat. And there's not enough heat on the surface in general on Terra. So they live underground and they artificially heat their caverns. Now, where have you heard about a hot cavern before in religious studies? It's the image of hell. So why do we have this image? Well, because at one time in the past, I don't have the video, I don't have the memo, but this had to have happened. The Draco came, when they first came to meet humans, which were a new creation by 22 to 24 advanced species who tinkered with our genetics and created us in their image with their best genes. So the Draco come along and say, look, we've been here way before you were. You're a new creation. You're some patchwork bullshit. And by the way, they were the very first ones to tinker with us. They were the first patchwork bullshit ones, genetic engineering race to take a little monkey and mess with its genes to see what they could do. So they're to blame for us from word go. But then, so we come along with other races that are giving, benevolent races that are giving us more loving sort of genetics and more possibility. Instead of being slaves, we can have more possibility. And the Draco come to the first human tribe, the humans who are like us, and they say, we want to tithe your children. And the tribe would go, say what now? And they're talking to a 14-foot tall reptilian and his buddies who are also 14 feet tall. And these are fearsome warriors, any one of which could kill every human on the planet. They don't need an army of reptilians to kill every one of us. They could kill one Draco could kill every human on the planet back then when there weren't that many. So now we have technology to come close to equaling what the Draco can do without any technology. They don't need technology to be fearsome warriors. We need a lot of technology to get close to equaling what they can do. That's today. And there's been a battle underground for a long time, many years. And there are still Draco here. Not that many, though. So the first meeting it had to have been this way. They said, we want to take 10% of your children, or 15 or 20%, whatever the percentage was. Every year, we take 10%. And we'll let you live if you give us 10% of your children. And they go, well, what are you going to do with our children? We're going to eat them alive because we like the drug that is created when the children are terrorized. And that's a substance called adreno. And then the next word is another word, but I'm not going to say the whole word. Everyone knows what it is. So that substance in the children's blood that gives them the high makes them very happy. And they're like, yeah, we love this. We love eating your pure children who alive. That's what we like to do. Just like we like eating a pig or a chicken or whatever. To us, it's just like, oh, it's just a chicken. Well, to them, our children are just like a chicken are to us, So we made the deal. It had to have been this way. We made the deal and said, okay, we'll give you X percentage of our kids to eat alive. We'll bring them down to your caverns for you. That's how we found out about their caverns, because people would be messengers taking the kids down. That's how we found out about hell. That's where the image of hell comes from, is their hot caverns. And they need that heat to feel good being in reptile bodies. They need that really hot environment. And then, so the image of hell is children being eaten alive by monsters in a hot place. That's hell. That's where we got this idea of hell. It's the worst place for humans. Best place for a reptilian, though, it's heaven. It's really good. They love the heat. They love eating children. And that's been the deal. We want to farm you. We'll let you live because we like your product. We don't give a fuck about you, except as breeders for food for us. So that's the Draco. Now, Ken has been in touch telepathically for more than a decade with 3 Draco who had been humans in past lives and have a sympathy for us and are giving us technology through him. That's why the internet, controlled by the Luciferians, does not like Ken, last name. They don't like his information because the Draco have lots of intel. They're really smart. They're way smarter than we are. And they've got a longer history. We're a young race in the universe. We're the last one to come along. We're not the first. And they know a lot of stuff. So they're giving Ken, last name, all of this incredible intel about technology and about quartz crystals and about DNA and about all this stuff. And so Journey to Truth podcast has interviewed him. I've interviewed him. I'm going to interview him again, as long as, they've tried to kill him many times. They tried to kill him. Ken.
Get me that guy's number.
Okay. I'll put you in touch with him. So, yeah, he's got quite a story. So he's been in touch with these Draco telepathically, these 3 Draco. And one day he said, you know what? I want to see you in person. I want to know that the voices in my head are coming from real beings and not just me being crazy. So they said, look, you're programmed to fear us. You have genetic programming to fear reptilians that look like us. And it's going to scare the shit out of you to meet us in person. So we're not going to do that. And he goes, I want to do it. Well, okay. So they said, okay, well, we told you. So that one day they appeared to him. They didn't tell him in advance, which would have been nice. They just appeared one day when he was doing a project with a friend outside, and they just ran. They saw him. They saw them. They go, oh, it looks like a Hollywood movie. It looks like it's so real, so realistic that it looks like a movie because movies are so real now. But in that, and then they go, oh, but it's not a movie. It's real. We have to run now. And they ran. So Ken was like, okay, you were right. Sorry about that. That was not a good idea. So he keeps taking the telepathic intel and giving it to us. Whoever asks him the question, he's not forcing it on anybody. You have to come to him. I come to him. Tyler and Aaron come to him, and they go, we got some questions. And he gives you the answer that he has gotten from these 3 benevolent Draco. So not all reptilians are bad, and that's an important thing to know. It's just that there's a contingency who's been inside Terra for a long time, terrorizing our populace. And it's been thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
I have no arguments. And this episode's going to get a lot of bad comments, and I love it.
That's all right. That's all right.
It's fine.
Do you want to talk about how the controllers control the sciences, the foundational pillar of control in the sciences?
That's a hard yes. You already know this.
Awesome. Well, it's something called the Big Bang. The first time you heard, tell me how to pronounce your first name again.
Jahan.
Jahan. Is that close enough? Because when I see it, I want to go Yehan. But you're like Jahan.
That's the playwright in you that makes me want to sound very Shakespearean.
Jahan. Okay, so Jahan, the first time you heard about the Big Bang, maybe you were 5, maybe you were 10, whatever it was, what did you think about the Big Bang?
I completely ignored it and went on along about my business, just thinking about other things.
Well played.
I never had an interest in that kind of stuff when I was a kid. So, even math and stuff, like, I was just like, fuck math. And like, I was the enemy of most of my teachers in science and math and stuff because I just didn't care, It's like, whatever you're saying, it just, just the stuff that like you can add together, that part makes sense, the formula and stuff, but everything else is just garbage. So I fail those things.
I think that's the instinct of most kids in school is that, what does this have to do with my life? How is this going to help me? How is this going to help me to learn about the Big Bang? So this is pretty much all of education for the first 12 years is nonsense that's not going to help us. Nobody comes out of school knowing which plants are medicine. Nobody comes out of school knowing which plants are food. I mean, students that graduate high school would die on a wilderness survival trip. They just all die. So in other words, but they know algebra. Yay. So in the sciences, what they did was the controllers, and I know it sounds dramatic to people, that it's like, oh, you must be one of those people who make up stories about secret societies. And so it's like, well, I'm just going to give you my opinion. You can tune out whenever you want. The controllers said, how do we keep the slaves in the Matrix? And you're like, what Matrix? It's not a movie with Keanu Reeves. It's just like, well, I'm talking about the thought control matrix. They're keeping our thoughts under control in a grid, and the grid is created through the first 12 years of trauma-based mind control called schooling. And that grid is meant to keep you from learning about who you are. So, what's the most foundational way to do that in the sciences? The most foundational way is to make you believe that you live in a young universe. The Big Bang gives us a young universe. It just came from nowhere. It just came from nothing, even though that defies our own academic physics. It's total nonsense on the face of it, as far as physics goes. But they're just like, well, we're not going to worry about that. It just did happen, and it came from nowhere, and even space was created, because there was no space before then, and space is now expanding too, because it's like it's accelerating outward, and everything's expanding, and it's like, oh, okay, well, the first time I heard that, I thought, well, that's insane. You're crazy. Everything came from nothing? That's bullshit. And then after the 1,000th time that a professor with a very serious look on his face was talking about the Big Bang, I said, well, I guess there's a Big Bang, So that's how it happens. They just keep repeating the nonsense over and over, gaslighting you. Now, what we know from researchers and writers outside of academia, here's Eric Lerner, The Big Bang Never Happened. You can't read any of these books inside academia. Here's another one. Here's Seeing Red by Halton Arp, who's an astronomer excommunicated for dismantling the Big Bang with his evidence that he found in his telescope. Here he is again, the Galileo of Palomar, catalog of discordant redshifts, the static universe, Hilton Radcliffe, which talks about the universe as it is, which is not an expanding universe. He's not saying it's not dynamic. He's saying it's not expanding. And then you've got the electric universe guys, Wallace Thornhill, David Talbot, and they dovetail with this plasma cosmology. Got Robert Temple, A New Science of Heaven. He's talking about plasma. So anyway, there are many problems with academic astrophysics, but it's the foundation for all the sciences, or at least it's the foundation for our view of our place in the universe. Because we think, well, here's the deal. If we live in a young universe that came into existence in a moment only 13.8 billion years ago, then it's plausible that we, Homo sapiens sapiens, are the first advanced race, which means we're alone. We're the only ones who have developed consciousness, which means we are not going to exit the thought control slave matrix to go search for our galactic family, because we're alone. Now, if we go on a hike and we look at one way to break the matrix, the thought control matrix, is just to read a bunch of books that talk about, especially this one, Seeing Red, which was about redshifts. He discovered intrinsic redshifts, which dismantles the Big Bang, because the Big Bang cosmology depends on redshift being associated with acceleration away from us and therefore distance away from us. But he found two objects in the night sky that had different redshifts, but they were connected by a material bridge. And he said, they're in the same place, but they have different redshifts. But academia is telling us that if the redshift is high, then it has to have accelerated away from us much faster than the redshift that's low. So he dismantled the Big Bang, and that's why they took away his telescope time, and that's why they ostracized him, because they didn't want their Big Bang fairy tale dismantled. So intrinsic redshift is just, that's the color of the star. It's that simple. Some stars have their yellow light shifted more toward the red. It doesn't mean they're flying away from us in a Big Bang universe. So this obvious, clear evidence is just like, no, we don't want to see that. We want our fairy tale, because we need you to stay in the thought control matrix. We need you to be our slaves. If you think that the universe is one of infinite time, or as Alex Collier says, he's an Andromedan contactee, his sources, the Andromedans, tell him that the universe is a 21 trillion year old hologram. But whether you believe it's a 21 trillion year old hologram or a universe of infinite time, that scale of time is so much greater than the 13.8 billion year Big Bang scale of time. If this is 21 trillion years, you wouldn't even be able to, there's no pencil fine enough to put 13.8 billion year. You wouldn't see 13.8 billion years on a 21 trillion year graph. You couldn't mark it there. It's too small. So let's say it's 21 trillion years and not an infinite universe. We don't actually know yet, because science outside of the universities, real science, hasn't yet found a beginning to the universe, so we don't know the age of the universe. But let's say it's 21 trillion years. In that time, many races will have obviously come to develop high technology. They're going to develop self-awareness. They're going to say, oh, we exist. The animals don't know they exist. They're just out there existing. We know we exist. Because we know we exist, we know we have a future. Because we know we have a future, we're going to develop tools to make our future better. We're going to make the landscape different. We're going to start to change it. We're going to start to farm. We're going to start to raise animals and breed animals and do all sorts of things with tools. And we're going to develop high technology. Well, what if we're the last race to develop high technology? What if us developing a laser is not even high technology to the advanced races who have been here for millions or billions of years?
Yeah. What else do you say? I could have just asked you at the very beginning, if you could challenge one misconception about the universe, what would it be and why? And then that's your answer,
Yeah. And so, like as I was starting to say earlier, but I lost track because I get off on different trains of thought. But one way of getting out of the thought control slave matrix is by reading this book or any of these books. The Big Bang Never Happened by Eric Lerner is great. Oh, Gods of the Bible is great. Mauro Biglino, an Italian scholar of Masoretic Hebrew. He was hired by a Vatican publishing house to give a word for word literal translation of the Bible. And he found ETs and spaceships. And the ETs were the gods because they had high technology. So they were just people, but we called them gods because they could do things we could barely dream of, And so that makes the Bible make tons of sense. Once you realize that there are warring factions of ETs on the planet, then the chaos of the Bible makes sense. Otherwise, you've got this God of love who's killing everybody. It just kills thousands of people, and it's like, why is the God of love killing everybody? I forget. So once you realize that it's not a God, Elohim is not a singular mono God, but once you translate Elohim correctly, then you get many people. That's what Elohim actually means. And, the scholars know this, but they're just like, well, we got to go with God. It means many people, the gods, the ET people who had high technology so advanced that we regard them as gods. So that's one way to break the matrix. To read about the Big Bang is another. And to see that the Big Bang has been completely debunked by real authors, real researchers outside of academia. They're not allowed inside academia, so they have to be outside. And then another way is to just go on a hike. So I want to get to that real quick before we go, because I know you have things to do. If you go on a hike, you can ask yourself, is what I'm looking at natural or artificial? And you can use your own eyes. You don't have to read a book. You don't have to listen to me. All you need to do is to say, I'm going to ask a question today because I've been told that the earth is natural. If that's the case, the feature that I'm looking at right now, this hill, this riverbank, this riverbed, this mountain, it would have certain features. And as I'm looking at it, I go, well, the theory that it came into existence naturally, it doesn't look natural for these various reasons. But then again, it does look artificial for these various reasons. And then you go, and you weigh it out and you go, which one has more evidence? And then you just make your decision, and you make a video or you don't, whatever you do on your hike. But I just want to ask people if they would maybe consider asking that question when they're on their hike, when they're out in nature. Just go, I wonder if we just set aside the false premise that we're the first advanced race in the universe. Just set that aside and go, what if there were advanced races that are out there who might have planet building skills? Maybe building a planet is child's play to an advanced race, a truly advanced race. Because we're not truly advanced at all. We're just babies compared to what they can do. What if there are races out there who can build planets? What if I should take that into account on my hike and go, you know what? What if they did build Terra? What if the continental features are all created for some reason? Maybe it's to channel water, to maybe water is the magic element that they wanted to work with, and that's what all the continental features are working with. Maybe the 45-degree angle seams in the riverbeds. If you look down from a drone, you'll see the 45s, and they're just ignored. They're just straight lines that are 45 to the flow, and they follow the flow. That's the primary angle of construction in riverbeds, creek beds, all across the world. That's the punchline that I'm sort of leaving to the end. I mean, maybe these 45-degree angles are for structural strength, created by planetary engineers who knew what they were doing. So that earthquake kinetic energy moving down the valleys, as earthquake kinetic energy does, it moves down valleys. It's in the riverbed. It's about to destroy your creek bed. It's about to destroy your riverbed that you just built, which is the foundation of the hills, which means the hills are going to be destroyed. And you want those hills there for some reason. You're an advanced race. You have your reasons. I don't know why they wanted hills there. They wanted them there. This earthquake's going to destroy your foundation for these structures. But what they did was they put the 45s in there as the primary angle of construction between sections of crystal and concrete. The earthquake kinetic energy takes that 45 into the hills and is dissipated, and it keeps moving down and it keeps getting dissipated. So it doesn't trouble and perturb your creek bed and river bed. That stays strong. They also had other angles. Sometimes they had right angles, and they go all the way across the creek bed. So they're not fractures, and they're straight. So the geologists have to just go, well, there's a straight line there. I'm not sure how it came into existence. It just happened. That's geology. It just happened. Well, no, there's no reason for straight lines like that in natural sedimentary or igneous or metamorphic material. There just isn't. So it would never happen in a trillion planets to have a straight line that in any of that material. Never. Because any real fracture follows weaknesses in the material. That's always going to be jagged. Everyone knows that. Geologists ignore that fact. They have to keep their degree to mean something. So sometimes there's right angles, but they have to break up the 45s with occasional right angles and sometimes 70 and 110 degree angles. Because if you just have the 45s, that's good for mitigating earthquake energy, but the earthquake can build up a resonance between this 45 and the next and the next and the next, and then that can be a problem. It's like when the Roman soldiers were marching across the bridges, they were marching in step, and they would destroy the bridges. So they had to develop a way so that they'd say, okay, this number of men will march at this step, and then you come in. So instead of dot, 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 you're coming in at dot, dot, dot. And so otherwise they destroy the bridges with the resonance because it's regular. So they can't have the regular 45s solely. They have the 45 primary angles to distribute the energy into the hills, but they need something to break it up. So they'll occasionally have a right angle, and they'll occasionally have 70 or 110. Cheers.
All right. Well, what else do you say about that without going on for another 3 or 4 hours? Tell everybody where they can find you.
Well, I think they should go find a nice hiking trail. They don't need a playwright telling them anything. But if they want to see what the chapters in my book, they can go to Artifact Terra on WordPress and just just look at it. And if they want to write the book, they can do that too. It's going to take me a long time. So if they get to it faster, that's fine. I don't care. We just need to know that we're not the first advanced race in the universe, that advanced races have planet building skills, that Nikola Tesla told us that man's greatest achievement, his words, would be building worlds from the ether. Because people would say, well, if you think people are building planets, races out there, where'd they get the material? Well, they got it from the ether. That's where everything comes from. So the ether is non-local in time, non-local in space. Because it's non-local in space, we can't see it. It's full of energy. Okay? It's been called a quantum field by modern physicists, but that's not quite right. Their field is a mathematical field, and it's just a grid of mathematics. This is a real energetic field. The ether, which they discarded in 1905 with Einstein's special relativity, he said, I don't need an ether. He brought back the ether at the end of his life because he said, I need an ether, but I'm not going to call it the ether. I'm just going to make it a mathematical grid to make my equations work, but there's nothing really out there. And it's like, oh, you just got rid of the one thing that could explain everything. The ether explains everything. That's where everything comes from. When there's a whirl in the ether, that's the beginning of differentiation. So an energetic field that's non-local in time and space, there is no differentiation. That's why we can't see it. Once you get a whirl in it, like an eddy in a river, then that's the beginning of differentiation. That's what creates a sun. Once a sun is created, then planets can be built around a sun. Now, whether suns are created solely by advanced races or whether they start as a natural whirl in the ether, an eddy in the river of the ether, maybe it's both. Maybe it starts that way and they come and engineer it. These vortexes are the key to it all, and it's all from the energetic ether. And so once the vortex comes into existence, a sun, a star, the plasma coming into existence from the whirl of the vortex in the ether, that's where the heat and light is coming from. That's heat and light are local. The ether is non-local. So suddenly there's a local manifestation of this energetic ether, and we can suddenly see it and feel it. Oh my gosh, like it's hot. Ooh, I can see something there. So it's local, and it's creating time for its star system, and it's creating intense heat. And the intense heat is not coming from inside the sun. Astrophysics tells us there's a nuclear furnace in stars. It's total nonsense. They don't know anything about stars. Stars are most hot in the outer layers above the surface. That's where the whirl is creating the original most hot and most illuminated photons, if you want to call them photons, which are themselves just whirls of geometrical frequential energy. They're not particles. Inside the sun is cold ether. So there's a skin. So the sun is hollow, just like a water balloon is hollow. So the skin of a water balloon is, to its interior, it's the same as the skin of a star is to its interior. So inside, there's no nuclear furnace, there's no heat. Ether is probably at 2 to 10 degrees Kelvin in there. Really coherent ether, perfect for a portal. It goes on and on. The nonsense of academia goes on, and it's a battle of people who sound crazy, like me, battling the academia who have actually been proven crazy by real science. So we know that stars aren't nuclear furnaces. We know that Tesla was right about the ether. He said our greatest achievement would be building planets. Not his greatest achievement, but the races. He knew that he wouldn't be building planets. He was going to die before that happened. But he said that one day we're going to learn how to whirl the ether, his term. We're going to learn how to whirl the ether to create matter and build planets. Nikola Tesla, this is why they had to get rid of him. They said, bye. We don't want you with your planet building theories. We don't want you with your free energy from the ether. We're going to get rid of the ether, and humanity is going to stay slaves forever.
I feel like when you compare Einstein to him, you get a guy that was smart enough to know that if I just write a bunch of squiggly lines and put some numbers in there, I can pander to these people's delusions and still have a career. You know, I feel like that's the basic summary of that. When you're dealing with a group that they pretty much just throw shit at the wall to see what sticks. So they'll just keep lying until they find the lie that works. That's it.
Yeah. The image of astrophysics today, the perfect image is Einstein sticking his tongue out at humanity. That's academic science.
Yeah, pretty much. Jock Doubleday, it's been a pleasure. We'll have to talk about some other topics again, because I know this could go on forever.
It's already gone on probably too long for you, but to me, I think about this stuff all day. So I'm like, well, I could go on and I don't want to overload anybody with the endless tangents that are hard to like keep track of. It's like, well, is he just going to talk about one thing, or is he going to try to talk about 20 things? So I apologize if it's too chaotic. That's just my ADD brain going off.
Don't ever fucking apologize for being on the Boundless Authenticity podcast, where we just piss people off.
You're listening to the Boundless Authenticity Podcast, where we discuss everything related to the evolution of human consciousness.
At the very least, people need to understand that the United States builds bunkers, which are basically cities underground, every 3 months.
Basically, when you dream, you tap into your subconscious. It is your nocturnal intuition, your creativity and imagination unchained from conscious reason, ego and logic.
They're biologically alive, but they have no soul. They have AI consciousness. They can alter your conscious of the brain to get the brain.
We live in a multidimensional reality, whether it comes through esoteric information in the spiritual realms, or the UFO people, experiencers, or mainstream through quantum physics and through mainstream science now realizing that parallel dimensions probably exist.
We're all spiritual beings. We're all having these human experiences. We've heard that phrase over and over and over. But what does that really mean?
You know, all the big questions of life, we have these answers inside of our souls.
We're ultimately studying the nature of what it is to be human, good and evil, our psychology, how we think, and our health. That's why I love Bruce Lee's great quote, all knowledge is ultimately self-knowledge.
The Boundless Authenticity Podcast.